Coffee Q&A. I'm Jay, your host here on the onocoffee. Most weekdays we've been doing this coffee Q&A where we've been talking about tasting coffee and discussing coffee. So if you have any questions about coffee or whatever, let me know. Put them put them over here, or is it over here in the comments, or if you're watching the replay, drop it down below. So October is Hispanic Heritage Month here in the United States. And what that means, it's a month of celebrating Hispanic heritage. It's also Philippine History Month, and there's a bunch of different months. I mean, there's only 12 months out of the year with so many different things to explore. It's kind of hard to have totally exclusive things for 1 month. So, but because it is Hispanic Heritage Month, I've been asked to help out with a coffee tasting celebrating Hispanic Heritage Month down in Washington, D.C. this week on Thursday. And it's part of this celebration that's happening. And so they called us and they were like, hey, would you be willing to come out and help us put on this coffee cupping, or more of a coffee tasting? There'll be, I don't know, maybe upwards of 200 people attending. And they wanted to have 5 different coffees. And so they're like, we want 5 coffees from Latin American countries. So that would be Central America, Mexico, and South America. One of the criteria they gave us was that they wanted to have a little bit more, not necessarily marginalized, but not so recognized coffee origins like Bolivia or Peru. And they wanted to have a really nice coffee from Ecuador because the managing partner of whatever organization this is Ecuadorian. And he wanted to have something really great from his home country. And so our task was to find a nice spread of coffees representing Latin America that would offer some of the flavors of these lesser known origins. So I found this Peruvian coffee that I think will be really nice quality Peruvian, and washed coffee. And then it was a question of let's fill it out with some other stuff. So we've got a coffee from Nicaragua, Honduras, Colombia, and then we have the Ecuadorian and the Peruvian. And so I'm going to bring those coffees to you this week, and we're going to talk about them as we come up. And so it should be kind of fun. I'm looking forward to it. The Ecuadorian coffee is one that's really, especially something I'm excited about. I know this woman, Denise Bustamante, down in Ecuador. She runs a farm called Hacienda Le Grand. And I was like, who has that here? So she's also good friends with my good friend, Miguel Meza from Paradise Roaster. So I called up Miguel out in Hawaii. I said, hey, do you have this coffee? Do you have a coffee from Denise? Because, it would be very difficult for me to fly some coffee here from Ecuador if she didn't have any in country. And it gives me an opportunity to buy coffee and work with a friend of mine. So it's great. So he had a bunch of it. Actually, he only had a little bit left. I said, how much do you have left? He said, I got about 5 pounds. I said, I'll take it all. Give it to me all. We're going to roll with it. And they roasted it up for us at Paradise and then shipped it out. And so we'll be tasting that as well this week. So those are some of the coffees that will be coming up this week here on the Coffee Q&A. But our first coffee today is a coffee from Nicaragua that we actually sourced from a company called Green Mountain Coffee Importers. They're based in Matagalpa in Washington, D.C. And actually, if you recall back to episode 54, that's already 20 episodes, probably about 3 weeks ago, we did a whole company of samples that Gold Mountain gave to us. And this is one of the really coffees that we enjoyed. It's called the PEAR Notes MICROLOT. This is actually the tag from that coffee. This is on my personal notes, this was my second favorite. But this was actually Matt's favorite coffee. So he got some of that because we're doing this in conjunction with Park and Perk, because Park and Perk is the lead organization. So Matt asked me, hey, would you be able to help us put this together? I was like, happy to do it, no problem. So if you actually have if you ever have any events that you need to put together, out and do tastings and different types of coffee events for you. So we roasted up. This was actually roasted, for those of you who are home roasters, this was roasted. Good morning, Mom. This is roasted on an Alirio Bullet. So if you're not, is an electric fired roaster that holds up to 1 kilo of coffee. Really popular for home roasters, as well as for smaller startup commercial roasters. All right, let's have a look at the coffee. So here it is. You can see nicely, like just a light medium. There's really a pretty aroma. Kind of like it smells like a really nice coffee. Like I'm excited to try it actually. All right, I can see it's a nicely even roasted coffee. There, like the other day when we were looking at the coffee from Safeway, there were issues in the coffee itself, but these look very clean. So let's get some. We're going to measure it out. We're going to measure, of course, 24 grams. There we go, 24 grams of this lovely coffee. Let's grind it up. We're going to give it a nice kind of medium-ish grind. Here on the R80 compact grinder. All right, let's have a look at that. Yeah, looks all right. All right. So for our brewing, we're going to do it in our V60. You'd think that like the brewer that I kind of have the biggest question about, which is the V60, as far as suitability for everything, is the one that I'm using all the time. All right, we're folding it over just like that to get a conical effect. You're probably wondering, why do you keep using all of these Melita ones? Why don't you just use the V60s? You got a whole bunch of them here. And that's true. I do have a whole bunch. But I do like this one because it's cost effective. It's easy to use. And because if we're doing multiple brewing over multiple days with different types of coffees and different brewers, by using this one type of brewer, it gives us greater, I think, consistency across the board. So whether we're using wedge-shaped brewers, conical brewers, or if we're using immersion brewers like the Clevers or the Bonavita or something like that, we're always using the same filter. So that's one factor that is always going to be consistent, right? So that's a big reason we're doing that. All right, so let's have a look at our grind. So as you can see, I have made it even. Let's get some water going on here. Taking it just off the boil, tearing out our scale, making sure that our timer is, reset. And here we go. Okay, 25 grams. We've already got some flow going through the bottom. Now, over the last couple of week or so, I feel like I'm going a little bit slow. So today I'm going to try to go a little bit harder. So now we got a little bit there for some blooming. Maybe I should look for like an illuminated digital timer so that I can see that. Actually, more so that you can see it. Okay, 30 seconds. Now we're going up with it. If you watch the show a lot, you know that I'm a big believer. My practice is not believe, but my practice is more about keeping the water level consistent throughout the pour, so that the water hydrates continuously all the coffee. I'm not too worried about running on the edges here like this because I want to make sure that all the coffee is saturated. What I do like is this kettle because it allows me to pour very controlled pours. I'm really much more interested in practical brewing techniques for the home user. You know, a lot of the coffee guys on YouTube like to talk about different, very specific techniques. What I've discovered over the years is that, you know, while there are specific techniques that can be applied, a lot of that has to do with the coffee at the moment that you're using. So one technique with one coffee will not necessarily translate into similar results with a different coffee. Like I was really taught this hard during the AeroPress United States AeroPress Championship and then the subsequent World AeroPress Championships, where I used the exact same methodology to basically, for the U.S. Championships, I basically swept the entire championships with one technique and one type of coffee. Right, there's certain type of coffee that we're using that competition. When we went to the World Championships, we used a different coffee. They gave us a coffee to use, and that coffee, and the technique, while making, I'm sure, made a great cup, it did not make the best cup because, you know, the judges chose something else. So while it's important to play around with different things, so just to expand your own knowledge, one thing that I'm doing here on our show is that, you know, using a lot, I'm going to use a lot, I always use a lot of relatively standardized approaches to these things, mainly because I want to try to keep some level of consistency. So as we're trying different coffees, we'll have an even representation of those coffees from show to show, day to day, month to month, and then eventually year to year, year in, year out, right? We're almost there, 291, and well, we are slow again. See, I'm always slow because I'm talking so much. We're at 3 minutes, 30 seconds, so we're at 3:10. This is my issue. I talk a lot on the show, and I get distracted, and then I always end up behind the curve. Maybe we could go a little bit coarser on the grind to help us out. 345, 354. Okay, there we are. There we go. A little bit of panic pouring there. Gonna put our water back in the kettle. It's about 4 minutes for our brew time. I'm just gonna rinse out the pour over. I like to rinse the pour over out like right after I brew so that it'll at least get the residue off of it. It may not be perfect. I'll probably go back later and worry about cleaning it. All right, so here's our elixir. Not too bad. Just a lot of warm notes. This coffee was roasted probably about 10 days ago, I think. All right, let's pour this in here. There we are. A little bit of diatomaceous earth and earthiness on the nose. Now, I'm going to expect that this is going to change a little bit as far as the flavor as it cools, right? It tends to be tighter when it's hotter and then more expressive as it cools. And this particular coffee, I think, is grown in the Matagalpa region. I was looking at Gold Mountain's website, and they don't really tell you too much information about the farm itself. Like they have this one farm that is supposed to be the overall farm, but they have a lot of farmers. So I don't know if that means that they are working on the same farm. On the, you know, like one of the farms we work with there, a different family. You know, one farm alone is 400 hectares. So farms can be significant in size, but are they shared by all these farmers? I don't really understand the way that they have it all structured, and the website doesn't seem to be too clear on that. I also wonder is if they keep some of the information obscured on their website so that, you know, for the fear that other coffee buyers will try to go directly to those farmers to buy directly from them. I'm not sure exactly that kind of stuff does happen in the industry. Me personally, I don't worry too much about those kind of things because, I know the farmers. Most of our farmers that I work with, I know them personally. I go to them directly. I don't really worry about, things like that. Juicy. There's a little bit of pungency, astringency, but it's a juicy kind of like fruity. But there is a little bit of a pungent right here that causes a little bit of puckering on the cheeks. Interesting. Interesting. I don't know. We'll see how it goes as it cools down. I'm getting definitely some fruitiness, some light pungency that seems to be going away as it's getting cooler. It's still warm, it's still hot, but as it's changing those few degrees, I can sense some change. If you look at the descriptions for this video, I did put some notes there that were given to me from Gold Mountain, as well as Gold Mountain's website, so you can see the page, and you'll have to scroll down because they don't have it marked so that it automatically goes straight to that. You'll have to scroll down and look for Sabino Maria Jesus's PEAR Notes MICROLOT. It's going to be on one of the cards. You just got to scroll down to see it, but that's directly from the importer's website. And then you can also read in the About Us sections about their Finca Immaculata and how that kind of works. I didn't get a chance to really deep read it before we came on live today, so I'm a little bit deficient in that respect. But I will have all that details before we do our event on Thursday. So how's your weekend? Was it good? I had my little nephew was my ward this weekend, and so I took him up to York, Pennsylvania, went to the York State Fairgrounds where they were having this thing called the White Rose Gaming Room. So once a year, White Rose is a group that puts on, that's a big pinball fan. They're like pinball fans, right? And so they have this whole setup where you go, you pay like $8 or no, $15. I paid $15. I paid $5 for my nephew. And you go there and they've got all these arcade games, all kinds of pinball machines, and pinball machines, not just like relatively recent pinball machines, but like stuff from all kinds of eras. Like there was this one pinball machine where it had kind of this sloped glass, and you took the pinball, and you rolled it down the glass towards the back of the machine. It was slightly sloped. It drops in, and then it bounces around. Like there's no flippers, and then it drops in, and that's the whole game. And I was like, wow, this is like some super old era, like maybe 1910s or something like that, some crazy. And they had pinball machines from all generations. Like it was really, I'd never been to this event, so I was really fascinated to go myself. And of course, they had a lot of upright video games, Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Galaga 20, Robotron 2084, Galaxian, and all that kind of stuff. I played Galaga quite a bit, but then really I was surprised. I surprised myself because I really ended up playing a lot of the pinball machines. I wanted to try as many pinball machines I had. They had probably a couple hundred or so, and you're just trying them all out. So really fascinating kind of place. And of course, they had a little like, if you wanted to buy parts or just the back glass, the artwork of the pinball machines, they had some of that there. They did not have my favorite pinball machine of all time, which was a pinball called The Black Knight. I don't know why, but I totally loved that. But they had things like Lethal Weapon. They had Space Invaders. Space Invaders, one of the more popular ones from the 80s. They had that. That was pretty cool to play again. All right, so it's cooled down a little bit. Definitely more fruit tones are coming out. More brightness is coming out. So it's kind of a lightly bright, more medium to low body. More body is kind of medium to low. Juicy for sure. Slightly astringent. When I say astringent, I'm kind of getting, maybe that I'm more equating that with acidity, right? Acidity, but really tasty. But speaking of pinball, so there's the old school, right? And then there's this new school of pinball. And there's this one game that I played, and I got a sticker for it. It's called Drained. Right? This is the game. If you look it up online, I'm sure they'll have some information on it. But now the pinball machines are like super high tech. Like the playing field, right, is like a screen, and it's touch sensitive, I guess, because depending on the game that you program into the box, you can actually have targets on the playing floor, the screen, that can change and morph and do all this kind of stuff. And then, like, I don't know, it was just a whole nother way of playing pinball. I was like, oh, this is really kind of fascinating that there is such a high tech generation. And it costs like, I guess new pinball machines cost like $8,000-9,000. I was like, oh, I had no idea they would cost that much money. If you want to buy a used one, you can get them probably under $2,000, depending on the machine, depending on the age, depending on the condition. And then, of course, you can buy actually some of the beat up ones that were like maybe part of it inoperative were still like well over $1,000. So it's an interesting world. All right, so juicy, kind of lemon, maybe a little bit of cherry. Yeah, I'm going to say that. Juicy, lemon, cherry, very light. Tea-like in body, right? So tea. I remember in the descriptions from Gold Mountain, they talk about it being a tea-like, and I can definitely see that now that it's cooled down a bit and gotten away from that pungency that we started out with at the outset when it was still hot, now definitely giving more way to that tea-like quality. And in many respects, this is, while I would not say this is a cheap coffee to buy, it's a relatively affordable coffee. I think this coffee sells in the $7 to $8 range. So if you wanted to get geisha-like performance for very un-geisha-like prices, this might be something to consider. Now, of course, Gold Mountain, the link that's in the description, is a commercial importer. So I don't know what kind of quantities they're willing to sell down to. Like if you go to Sweet Maria's, you can buy them by the pound, right? Because, Owen's kind of crazy. And so he's selling you all this coffee, a great coffee for £1 at a time. Really great way to go. But a lot of importers are not geared for the consumer market. So you might have to check on that. All right. Well, that's nice. Tea-like, juicy, lemon, cherry, actually quite an enjoyable coffee. But a very different experience if you're expecting regular type of coffee, right? If you're coming expecting all this body and heaviness and chocolatey nutty, this is not going to be to your bag. This is very different. This is actually really quite expressive on its own right. Nice. All right, that's it. The Pear Notes MICROLOT. There it is. From Sabino and Maria Jesus, down in Matagalpa, Nicaragua. Oh, speaking of Matagalpa, Nicaragua, we're planning a trip for March 2024. If you're interested, keep that in mind. We're going to be doing a trip down there to visit a farm and actually maybe get you guys some hands-on, for people that want to come, get you guys some hands-on, farming, picking some cherries. So that time of year, there should be some cherries still left. Get down there, get on the farm, really get to see what farm life is like and how to process coffee. If you're interested in that, keep that in mind. We might be doing that in the springtime. But all right, yeah, that's about it. That's all I have for you today. Thank you very much for tuning in. Appreciate you being here again. Mom, always good to see you. And everybody else, thank you very much. And yeah. I got to run off because I've got an 11 o'clock appointment at my new PCP because, got to try to be healthy. Yeah. All right. So until next time, until tomorrow, back again with another coffee for Hispanic Heritage Week. And see you next time. You too, Mom. Have a beautiful day.